Some financial experts fear the Federal Reserve might take action giving it greater control over Americans' financial freedom. That threat is the creation of a government-backed digital currency. CBN's Dale Hurd explains why this move is not only bad for consumers, it's bad for governments as well.
When asked whether a Federal Reserve or central bank digital currency might be on the horizon, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said no.
People don't need to worry about a central bank digital currency. Nothing like that is remotely close to happening anytime soon.
While Powell admits the central bank continues to work toward this currency, he realizes the obstacles to success are insurmountable. For starters, the Fed knows a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, could wreck the nation's banking industry, threaten the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, and even threaten the Fed itself. Financial expert Nick Anthony of the Cato Institute and author of the new book, Digital Currency or Digital Control, says CBDCs don't do much of anything well except spy on you and control your money.
The government shouldn't be trusted with a CBDC because they're so ripe for abuse. The government would have Americans' data by default. It would be on their servers a click away.
Digital money could be programmed solely for use towards certain purchases at certain times or with an expiration date. It could also be turned off, like how the Canadian government froze hundreds of bank accounts to stop the Canadian truckers' blockade over COVID restrictions.
Programmability has been something that many central banks and many governments have been looking into, where payments could be programmed or the money itself could be programmed.
However, Americans already have digital money, from credit and debit cards to apps like PayPal and other cryptocurrency. In addition to competing directly with those financial tools, a central bank digital currency would be able to divert funds that private banks need to survive.
If we think about the current banking system, where deposits come in and then banks use those deposits to fund loans, a CBDC poses a fundamental threat to that, where every dollar that's held as a CBDC instead of in a savings account, for example, would mean that that's a dollar less that the banking system can use.
A digital dollar would also be way more than the Federal Reserve, with its 20,000 employees, could handle. The Fed would have to take on the credit risks of hundreds of millions of Americans, as well as the legal responsibilities the private banking sector currently handles. And if you've ever stood in line at a DMV, you can imagine just how badly the government could mess it all up. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's experiment with what it called Dcash was a small disaster. A single computer glitch made the currency unusable for months. And do Americans want to entrust even more of their financial information to the government, given that the Fed has been hacked several times in the past and leaked sensitive information about financial firms just last year? While there is talk of a privacy-enhanced CBDC, Anthony points out this is the same federal government that's already looking through your bank account.
The government has almost unfettered access into who you are and what you're doing, because it requires banks and other financial institutions to routinely report your financial activity.
Some argue the government will be forced to issue a CBDC to ensure the dollar remains the world's leading reserve currency. Technology, however, has nothing to do with the dollar's dominance. It's based on our rule of law, financial transparency, and capital markets. A badly managed CBDC, though, could cause other nations to ditch the dollar. This doesn't mean a digital dollar won't happen one day. Controlling people's money is, after all, the ultimate instrument of government control. But the Fed hasn't yet figured out how to make one work.
We're nowhere near recommending or let alone adopting a central bank digital currency in any form.
Dale Hurd joins us from the CBN News Desk with more. Dale, we saw just last week the vulnerability of computer networks due to the CrowdStrike security patch. Systems were shut down worldwide. I can't imagine going to your bank account to transfer funds or paying for food at a grocery store or a restaurant Suddenly discovering all your digital money's been zeroed out. Is that only fiction or is it a legitimate concern?
It's a big concern. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when the government was hacked, I think the Pentagon, they found out they were using COBOL computer language, which is like over 30 years old. I think one of the senators said it was older than him. So yeah, this is the government managing things. And yes, zeroing out your money. In Pakistan, they did it a couple of years ago to protesters, not through digital money, but through the country's biometric citizen card or whatever. And of course, they did it in Canada against the truckers. So yeah, do you want the government in charge of all of your finances? I don't.
Well, you mentioned the Fed has been hacked several times in the past. It made it vulnerable to exposing sensitive information. So what would CBDC mean for privacy rights, not only as a result of computer hacking, but also from government snooping, like what was done to some of the January 6th participants? Would that be easier to do? Would AI make a difference?
Yeah, I don't know about AI, but it would be very easy to do. Now, Congress is paranoid about this, and just this year wrote a bill forbidding the Fed from issuing a currency. They don't want a national digital currency, but it didn't go anywhere. And as I've explained in the story, I don't think this is going anywhere in the near term because of all the obstacles to it.
Well, what do you say then to Christian eschatologists who insist we're getting closer to the end times because we'll soon have a global digital currency? So your report suggests it isn't as close to happening as many people may think, Dale.
Yeah, it would require a change in government, not a change in technology. In other words, it would require a government that didn't care about taking away your rights, didn't care about the security of the system, didn't care about whether it was smart or not. They were just power mad and they wanted to persecute the populace. So you go down the list of things this doesn't do well, and it's pretty long. And when we get to the fact that it hurts the banking sector, as I mentioned. It hurts the dollar as the world's reserve currency, and it hurts the Fed itself, which is way too small at this point to manage a national digital currency. So there are just too many technological obstacles to this right now, but I suppose a dictator or a malevolent force can do whatever they want.
Well, who's pushing this right now here in the U.S.?
Oh, good question. Not a lot of people. It's sort of a boogeyman in the back of people's imagination because of this fear that we look at China, we look at some of the experiments, and it is being experimented with all around the world, but that's not going to get over the obstacles that I explained, that the obstacles to this is a digital currency.
Okay, Dale Hurd, excellent report. It's one we haven't seen elsewhere. Thank you, Dale, for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Gary.